What if the history you have been taught, the very foundation of our collective understanding, is not the complete story? Imagine, for a moment, a bastion of knowledge, a silent fortress of thought, so exclusive that its contents are known to only a select few. This is not the realm of fiction or myth. We are speaking of a real place, a repository holding manuscripts so potent they could potentially unravel the fabric of modern civilization, historical records that challenge our timeline, and esoteric texts that question the very nature of divinity itself. This place is the Vatican Apostolic Library, and today we embark on a journey into its deepest mysteries. We will delve into the shadows of its legendary collection, asking the questions that echo through centuries. What truths are so profound they must be locked away? What does the established order fear us discovering? And does a form of knowledge exist within those walls? A forgotten wisdom capable of fundamentally altering our entire belief system? Prepare yourselves, for the path we are about to walk is one that may illuminate far more than you could ever anticipate. Officially established in the year 1475 by Pope Sixtus IV, the Bibliotheca Apostolica Vaticana stands as one of the most ancient and profoundly enigmatic archives on Earth. However, scholarly consensus suggests that its clandestine collections existed long before this formal inauguration, growing in the shadows of history. What truly distinguishes this library from any other institution of learning is not merely the staggering volume of its holdings, but the impenetrable veil of secrecy that surrounds them. Unlike the public libraries that serve as open gateways to information for all, the Vatican's archive operates under a paradigm of extreme control and mystique. Access is a privilege granted only to a handful of esteemed scholars, and only after they have presented compelling, rigorously vetted justifications for their research. Even then, their access is carefully curated. But this begs a monumental question. Why? What knowledge is contained within its fortified vaults that necessitate such extraordinary measures of protection? At the very core of the Vatican Apostolic Library, far beyond the encyclopedias and conventional historical records, lie corridors and chambers that guard a different class of document entirely. Here, it is said, rest the manuscripts that defy conventional wisdom, texts that have been deliberately sequestered from the public consciousness for generations. These writings were deemed so destabilizing, so profoundly subversive, that the Catholic Church itself saw fit to condemn them to an eternity of silence. These are not ordinary forbidden books. They are intellectual artifacts that directly confront established structures of power. They possess the potential to reshape our entire perception of history, to redefine the narrative of religion, and to challenge the very essence of faith itself. They were not simply censored in a conventional sense. They were methodically and purposefully withdrawn from the world, concealed in climate, controlled vaults, and behind locks of immense complexity, perhaps awaiting a future era when humanity might be deemed ready to confront their revelations. Among these suppressed chronicles, perhaps none is more famous than the Gospel of Judas. Unearthed in the arid sands of Egypt in 1978, this second-century manuscript presents a narrative so radically divergent from the canonical Gospels that it shakes the very pillars of Christian theology. In this text, Judas Iscariot is not the archetypal betrayer, the villain of the sacred story. Instead, he is portrayed as the most intimate disciple of Jesus, the only one who grasped the true, esoteric nature of his master's mission. According to this Gnostic Gospel, Jesus himself confided in Judas, revealing the cosmic necessity of the betrayal. To fulfill his divine destiny and transcend his earthly vessel, Jesus had to be delivered to the Roman authorities. From this perspective, Judas is transformed from a contemptible traitor into a crucial divine instrument, the catalyst for Jesus' spiritual ascension and liberation from the material plane. This interpretation does more than offer an alternative viewpoint. It fundamentally calls into question the entire Orthodox Christian narrative of sin and redemption, presenting a vastly different understanding of the relationship between Jesus and his most trusted confidant. It is for this reason, its profound challenge to established dogma, that the Gospel of Judas was fiercely rejected by early church fathers and classified as a Gnostic heresy. The truth it purports to reveal is philosophically immense, but its potential impact on traditional Christianity would be nothing short of cataclysmic, which is likely the primary reason for its long exclusion from our history. Let us now turn our attention to another enigmatic group from the annals of history, the Knights Templar. This formidable medieval military order, which amassed immense power and influence, was accused of heresy and brutally dismantled in the early 14th century under the directive of King Philip IV of France. Its members were subjected to horrific torture, and many were burned at the stake. Yet, the official historical record remains conspicuously silent about the fate of their extensive and secret archives. During the widespread persecution of the Templars, it is believed that a vast trove of their documents was confiscated and transported directly to the Vatican. These were not mere administrative records. They were detailed accounts of their quest for the Holy Grail, complex alchemical treatises, and the secret rituals that formed the core of their esoteric tradition. These files were considered so potent and mysterious that for centuries they have been kept under the tightest security, their contents never revealed to the wider world. The Holy Grail, a symbol of immense divine power, appears to have been central to the Templar philosophy. If documents detailing its true nature truly reside within the Vatican, they could represent a profoundly suppressed body of knowledge about this artifact and the power it was said to wield. The enduring mystery of the Templars and their connection to the Grail has spawned countless theories, yet the Vatican has never permitted these sequestered records to see the light of day, deepening the enigma. Another forbidden text rumored to be held within the labyrinthine walls of the Vatican Library is the collected correspondence of Mary Magdalene. This collection of letters, purported to be penned by Mary Magdalene herself, offers a vision of early Christianity that starkly contrasts with traditional representations of women within the Church. In these alleged letters, Mary Magdalene is depicted not as a mere follower or a redeemed sinner, but as a central pillar of Jesus' ministry. She is portrayed as an apostle in her own right, a confidant with whom he shared his most profound and secret revelations. The Gospel of Mary, another Gnostic text discovered in 1896, corroborates this view, emphasizing the unique spiritual role she played and highlighting her importance far beyond the simplified, often marginalized, version presented in the canonical scriptures. According to these texts, she not only comprehended Jesus' teachings on a deeper level, but also interpreted them with a unique wisdom, often placing her at odds with the more dogmatic, male-dominated vision of the other apostles. The public revelation of such letters could revolutionize our understanding of early Christianity, suggesting that the nascent church was far more inclusive and philosophically diverse than the official scriptures lead us to believe. If authenticated and released, these texts could call into question the entire patriarchal structure that has defined the Church for 2 millennia and its historical stance on the role of women in the divine order. Furthermore, whispers persist among certain researchers and theologians that within the Vatican's most secret vaults lie manuscripts proposing an even more radical idea, that humanity's spiritual development has been influenced by contact with intelligences not of this world. These ancient texts, it is said, suggest that the very phenomenon of religion is not solely a product of human spiritual seeking, but a complex response to transcendental encounters with advanced civilizations from beyond our Earth. Proponents of this theory believe the Vatican holds not just historical records of these celestial visitations, but perhaps even concealed instructions, a kind of cosmic guide on how humanity might re-establish a connection with beings from other planes of existence. What other truths might the Vatican be safeguarding within its imposing architecture? The concept of a universal truth, a shared gnosis between the divine and the extraterrestrial, presents a powerful challenge to the traditional, earth-centric cosmology of the Church. If such texts genuinely exist, they could hold the key to an entirely new understanding of our species' place within the vastness of the cosmos. To understand the motive for such secrecy, we must look to the Inquisition, one of the most harrowing periods in the history of the Catholic Church. This was not merely a time of religious persecution. It was a systematic and brutal instrument of intellectual control. Through the purging flames of the stake and the chilling shadows of the torture chamber, the Church sought not only to eliminate heresy and deviations from faith, but also to consolidate absolute power over knowledge itself. It meticulously shaped the narrative of humanity to align with its own institutional vision and temporal needs. The Church's fear was twofold. It feared the threat of divergent beliefs, but perhaps more profoundly, it feared the subversion that comes from knowledge, knowledge that could shake its secular and spiritual authority to its core. What would transpire if the general populace began to question the sacred teachings? Or worse, discovered a hidden history and a forgotten philosophy that directly challenged the established dogmas? The strategic manipulation of truth became one of the Church's most effective instruments, and the Vatican Library, with its accumulating hoard of ancient secrets, became the ultimate fortress for this control over human knowledge. During the long centuries of the Inquisition, countless manuscripts and ancient books were condemned and burned. However, the most insidious loss was not what was destroyed in public spectacles, but what was quietly confiscated and lost to the shadows of history. These were texts containing ancestral wisdom, the accumulated knowledge of ancient cultures and philosophical traditions that offered a worldview entirely different from the one the Church sought to impose. Among the most significant targets were the works of Aristotle and Plato, whose rational approaches to the world were often sanitized or suppressed, and the writings of Hellenistic thinkers. Hermeticism, an esoteric tradition with roots in ancient Egypt, was a primary adversary. Its teachings on spiritual awakening, cosmic unity, and the principle of as above, so below were considered exceptionally dangerous, because they offered a path to the divine that did not require the Church's mediation. The secret knowledge of alchemy, astrology, and Kabbalah was similarly viewed as a direct threat to the monopoly the Church held over spiritual truth. The destruction and suppression of these books were not mere acts of censorship. They represented a concerted effort to erase humanity's collective memory, to sever our connection to millennia of wisdom that could unlock the spiritual and intellectual potential of every individual. Books like the Corpus Hermeticum and other foundational esoteric writings were highly sought after by inquisitors, not just for destruction, but for acquisition. The control over knowledge was not limited to the physical elimination of texts. It was a battle for the very dominance of reality, a struggle to ensure that only the official, sanctioned versions of history and religion would endure for future generations. This leads us to a critical question for our modern age. How much of what we accept as historical and religious fact today is the result of a carefully edited narrative? If these powerful documents truly exist, how is their secrecy maintained in an age of information? The Vatican Library employs one of the most sophisticated and stringent security systems in the world. There are numerous restricted zones, where only a handful of high-ranking individuals are permitted entry. The secret archives themselves are under constant 24-hour surveillance. The few researchers who do gain limited access have reported that they are often forbidden from physically touching the ancient documents. Instead, their studies must be conducted through high-resolution digital screens, viewing copies that have been pre-selected for them by Vatican authorities. The control is absolute, and there is a final, chilling deterrent. Any scholar who attempts to disclose or publish sensitive material faces immediate and permanent excommunication from the library, their access revoked for life. What then are they so determined to hide? What truth requires such a fortress of secrecy? The implications are staggering. We are left to ponder what lies dormant in those archives. Is it a history where pivotal religious figures are cast in an entirely new light? Is it a forgotten science that merges the physical and the spiritual? Or is it a chronicle of our own origins that is far grander and more mysterious than we have ever been led to believe? The silence from within the Vatican's walls is deafening, leaving us with more questions than answers. What are your thoughts on this profound mystery? Join the discussion in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this exploration. If this video was helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. And now, leave a comment below and tell us one thing you are grateful for today.